Tony D and Little Joan in the background, and I don't have much time, but I wanted to do a quick video on how to write a slasher movie. Smash like and subscribe. Thank you for liking and subscribing. Check out my books. The links are in the description. Comedy Horror in South Jersey. It's the Pineys, books 1 through 17, available at Amazon.com. Don't forget, Kindle Unlimited is free. Excuse me. Don't forget the t-shirt thing too, now available. Okay, how to write a slasher movie. This is pretty simple. Act 1, Act 2, Act 3. As always, first act, you introduce a bunch of characters. You're going to be killing most of them, so you want to introduce enough so you have some place to go. You want to throw in some red herrings, guys who are definitely going to survive, and you can always go back and add characters or delete characters as you see fit. You want to establish the location or the area where the murders are going to take place, and all that good stuff. And then at the first act, you have the first murder, right? Maybe the killer has been stalking people throughout the first act, and then by the end of the first act, you should have the first murder. Into the second act. Now, when the first murder happens, it's not always recognized as a murder. A lot of times a person just disappears, or they're killed, but it looks like an accident, or they just think, oh man, he must have really, he fell on a knife. But of course, during the second act, another person is found, then another person, and then soon the killer's killing people left and right. Eventually, he runs into the protagonist at some point, chases her or tries to kill her. Usually it's a woman, but she gets away. Sometimes she gets injured, but someone else, gets killed, but she gets away. Finally, it all comes to a head in the third act as the protagonist starts figuring out where this killer's from, why they're doing the things that they're doing. And in the third act, the killer usually dies, but sometimes, falls down a mine shaft or something stupid like that. And it depends on whether or not the killer is a supernatural entity or he's just a regular dude who just murders people for some reason. Now, I'm not a big fan of these movies. I think most of them, 90% of them, are stupid. But the one I really like is the first Halloween. The first Halloween is an absolute classic. It's really well done. It's everything about it is good. So I think when you go to write a movie, you should be familiar with the classics of that particular genre. And this is a very small subgenre. Most of the movies are terrible. Even some of the ones that I could name that you would know instantly. But that movie is not terrible. The first Halloween is really, really good. The second one's not bad. So definitely go see that if you haven't. But you should see some of the popular ones, some of the current ones. And after you see them, you should say, what works in this and what doesn't? Is gore really helping? You look at a movie like Saw, it tends to be very gory. I don't find that particularly scary. I just find it gross and boring. Look at, again, Halloween to see how he creates tension with music and different events in that film. You want to come up with an original killer, an original reason. Sorry, the dog's running around. An original reason why he's killing people at all. That's the toughest part. Why is your killer running around? It's easy to say, well, he's crazy. Or, well, he's just evil. That's really kind of boring. You gotta come up with a good reason. Now, if you have a folk tale, like, the Jersey Devil or something similar, that does half the work for you. But if you use a folk tale and now it's the modern day, you probably have to explain why this wasn't happening since the folk tale was invented, or has it always been happening and people didn't notice, or whatever. Things like that have to be sort of fleshed out, and you may not have a lot of data on a folk tale or wives' tale or whatever, and you need to flesh that out. There needs to be rules to supernatural creatures if he's supernatural. If he's a normal dude, it's generally tougher to explain. How does he keep getting away with the murders? Why did they always happen in a certain area? Why didn't anybody notice before? All these questions have to be answered. And the answers have to be different than, well, he's Jason Voorhees and he's just crazy. See, that movie's already been done. Oh, the reason he never leaves the summer camp is because he lives there and he's crazy. That movie's already been done. Don't do another friggin' summer camp murder movie. Same thing with Freddy Krueger haunting your dreams or whatever. And Mike Myers just being crazy and escaping an asylum. You got to come up with reasons why these guys do what they do. Now, they may very well be crazy, like Michael Myers, because mass murderers tend to be crazy. But why they are crazy and how that ties into the plot is often very key to making the character interesting. And keep in mind, the killer has to be pretty interesting in the movie. His victims generally, and even the protagonist, aren't that interesting. You should try to make them as interesting as possible, but it depends on the setting. A movie that I would recommend, it's not really a slasher movie, it's more of a parody of a monster movie, but it's actually very well written, surprisingly so. I watched it on a whim. It's called Zombeavers, and it's about zombie beavers. And the interesting thing about it is every character in that film has its own personality and its own, way of talking. And you watch that movie, and it's pretty damn good for what it is. In terms of the script, it's surprisingly well written. Every character has a distinctive voice in that film. I'll die on that hill, so to speak. So that's what your screenplay, as always, in all screenplays, you want that distinction. So when people see your movie, even a dumb slasher movie, they say, well, this is pretty good. It makes it compelling that the characters all have a separate voice. But you need different reasons for why your characters run around murdering people. Now, he's probably going to be crazy, but he could be a different kind of crazy. Why is he doing it? Well, maybe he thinks everybody's an alien. I don't know. It's tough. It's tough to come up with a good reason. You can read about serial killers and like the Mind Killer. What is it called? Oh, gosh. Not the Mind Killers. Is it called the Mind Killers? It's the book about serial killer profiling. You can read about that. Get some ideas about that from the real life guys. And again, you got to get away from what happened in real life. But if you pick a folk tale or a monster that already exists, it already has sort of a preset rules and a story behind it, so that can be very useful. If not, you can make up your own, of course. Just make it so you want the monster to have certain powers, but you also want them to have certain weaknesses, so the characters have they have a chance to escape. One of the things, they did in Saw, which is pretty popular, is, he would create these puzzles, right? And the idea was, well, if you can figure out the puzzle, then you're going to get out. Of course, they almost never get out, right? They all die, or another person gets horribly injured or whatever. Again, I don't really like these films, but I did love the first Halloween movie. And I think if you watch that, if you haven't seen it already, you will see how that movie is head and shoulders over most slasher movies. Most slasher movies are garbage. They're not fun or interesting. Another movie you might check out, and so it's a bit of a twist and a parody on these movies, is Tucker and Dale versus Evil, I think it's called. Or is it Tucker and Dale? Yeah, Tucker and Dale versus Evil. That's a pretty good movie, but that's a parody. It's really a comedy, but it plays upon certain tropes in that movie. I wouldn't advise doing a parody of these movies. That is kind of what Scream was. It was kind of really a part parody and part deconstruction of these slasher movies. Um, I would get away from the mask and the look and, all the tropes that have been done before. Just throw them right out and come up with new weapons, new way for people to kill, and why they do it. And try to look at it from a different perspective. So, for instance, you might have a killer who doesn't use the same weapon twice, right? He uses completely different weapons. Maybe it's some sort of weird online contest to kill as many people in a certain time period, right? And so he does it in weird, different ways, and and part of the rules is he can never kill a person the same way twice. I mean, you got to really workshop it. There's a lot of these movies, so do your research. If you come up with something that sounds like it's been done before, dig deep before you commit to it, because there are a lot of these movies, and sometimes great minds or people who make slasher movie minds think alike. Just do your best. Do your best. Try to make it, and keep in mind, it's not about the gore. I mean, for some people, I guess it is, but not for me. I like a good horror movie. I like a good scare. You don't have to show any blood to scare the hell out of people. You really don't. Stay away from jump cuts. Stay away from the tropes. And do something original. Gosh darn it. Anyhow, that's it for me, Tony D, and Little Jones somewhere behind me. Thanks for tuning in. I will be at the I Heart Horror Ice Cream Jamboree car show thing at the VFW Hall from 10 to 4. The link is in the description. Come on out to Sayreville, New Jersey. It's going to be a great day. Hope to see you there. We'll see you tomorrow.